Kicking things off today with a high-level service overview of about half of the services that are part of the package. And then on Friday, coming back together, same time, same place, to wrap back up. So today we're joined by Angela Keller from OMH, as well as Mimi Weber from OCFS to talk us through both just an update on home and community-based services for kids, as well as the service-by-service overview. And then also there are folks from OASAS and DOH on the line as well to help us out with Q&A, which we hope to save some time for towards the end of the presentation. So just very quickly, I'm sure many of you are familiar with our housekeeping and logistics, but just again, a friendly reminder and request that if you're sending in questions, which we encourage throughout the course of the presentation, you don't have to hold them all for the end, is to please send them to all panelists. If you're looking for how to send in questions, in the upper right-hand corner, depending on your browser, there's a chat button with a little speech bubble. There's a drop down there that says all panelists, and that's really appreciated as we're in different physical locations that we can all see the questions as they come in. And just as a reminder, any questions that we're not able to address today will be reviewed and incorporated into future trainings and resources, and oftentimes into the Q&As and FAQs that come out of these presentations. And just as a final friendly reminder, the information and timelines are current as of the presentation today. The content that's being presented is a summary of the draft HCBS manual, the draft children's HCBS manual, which will be made available soon online. So a couple of just big picture goals for today, why we're all here. The first is to, again, reiterate and refresh an explainer for children's home and community-based services, and along the way adding whatever context and clarity where it's possible and helpful. And also it's very much to generate and answer questions. So again, we really appreciate folks throughout as things are coming to mind, not sitting on questions, but sending them in, hearing back from providers and stakeholders that are interested in children's HCBS is really helpful as we get ready for designation and implementation. And then speaking of designation and implementation, hopefully today is helpful in terms of informing service providers' decision-making process about the aforementioned designation process, information about which will be made available soon. Last but not least, an agenda so you know what to expect from the next 54 odd minutes or so. So Angela Keller will be helping us out with a system transformation and HCBS update. And then Mimi will be stepping in with a robust service walkthrough of habilitation, respite, pre-vocational services, supported employment, community self-advocacy training and support, caregiver, family support and services. And then I'll be coming back on towards the end for a quick future training and available resources summary, followed by hopefully what will be some robust Q&A. So with that, I'm actually going to hand things over to Angela up in Albany to take it from here. Angela, if we can't hear, I can't hear you at least. Are you guys on mute?
Are we?
Oh, there you go. Hello. Nope, now I think you're back on mute. There's a little X next to your phone. Through the system, it's the red microphone over on the far right-hand side of the screen.
Where?
There you go.
There I go. What? Go back to the small.
No, we hear you now. Sorry.
Oh, you do? Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Loud and clear.
Right.
No problem at all. Wednesday morning.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Obviously, I haven't had enough coffee this morning. This is Angela Keller from OMH. We want to start off the webinar with just a little bit of news to let folks know that, as Dan said, this is really the kickoff to provide information around service delivery, services, and other information that will be helpful in providers making decisions about applying for designation for the SPA services and also for HCBS. We are highly optimistic that next week we will be able to release the provider designation application, so stay tuned right before the holiday for that coming to an email near you. Okay. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we had a children's MRT meeting, and I just wanted to highlight again for those that may have missed the announcement regarding the timeline changes that this visual provides you with a list of what happens at every juncture. So we were going to go live on January 1st of 2017 with all the SPA services. We have split that into 2 SPAs actually, and are going to start the other licensed practitioner service statewide on March 1st. And then the remaining 5 services in the new SPA services will start on October 1st of 2017. The managed care transition of existing behavioral health Medicaid services, the HCBS services that we'll discuss today, and the new SPA services will transition to managed care on October 1st of 2017. So that was a movement from July 1st to October. The remaining dates for January 1st of 18, July 1st of 18, and January 1st of 19 have not changed. So what was planned for those 3 junctures in time are still the same. Okay, so we want to do a quick review. I think most of you have probably seen a version of this slide previously, but it's important to understand that across the 5 1915C children's waivers, and that's the OMH Serious Emotional Disturbance Waiver, OCFS's Bridges to Health Waiver, and that's all 3 of them, Care at Home 1 and 2 waiver, we have aligned the HCBS services that will move into managed care so that regardless of the population that a child might be in, they can access the same array of services. What we've done here is just shown that across the top in the purple columns, what is the name of the service as we move into managed care, and then the yellow boxes is where did that originate from or its foundation. These services are not exactly the same as some of the current 1915C services, but they certainly laid the foundation for where we're going. And same with this slide with the remaining 6 services, and we'll be discussing those in more detail on Friday. I am having great difficulty in advancing slides. Tic-Tac, I think you're going to need to take back the slide forwarding. We can't forward them any longer. Thank you. Okay, next slide. So what we anticipate coming out around at the same time that the provider designation application will be a provider manual, which we'll get to in a minute, but today we're going to cover the several services, habilitation, respite, pre-vocational, supported employment, community self-advocacy training and support, caregiver family support and services. So as I said, the designation application, we are optimistic that will be released next week. And we will release at the same time the HCBS provider manual. So this is the first time that we will have released a draft. And the SPA provider manual revision will also be released. Soon to come will be the rates and methodology. So again, all of these things can inform decision-making for providers. Next slide. So our goals for the Children's Home and Community-Based Services is to offer support and services in non-institutionalized settings in the least restrictive setting possible, and allow kids to remain at home in their community with their families and caregivers. These services will be provided within an integrated person-centered plan of care. That care will evolve over time through ongoing coordination within the health home, and it'll also support the integration of trauma-informed care principles into the delivery of services. So to give you a highlight of what you will find in the HCBS Provider Manual, next slide please, these are the headings of the sections that will be detailed. So the service definitions, the definition of home and community-based services in general, what's the modality, the setting, agency, individual, and supervisor qualification and training requirements by service. The section for limitations and exclusions will be forthcoming in another draft, but certainly is part of the manual. Another thing to highlight for folks as you view the application soon is that the HCBS services are held to the CMS final rule, which specifies that all settings where HCBS are provided and where the recipients of HCBS live must meet a number of different requirements, and they're highlighted here on this slide. So individuals must be integrated into the greater community and the services should support their full access to the community. They should have choice and selection of the options. And the settings in which one of these individuals live must ensure their rights of privacy, dignity, and respect, and optimize autonomy and independence in making decisions, and certainly facilitate choice about services and who provides them. There's additional information online about the final rule stipulations, and we will certainly have more implementation guidance forthcoming on how to interpret the settings and implement that once we get closer to implementation of the home and community-based services. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mimi Weber for the service walkthrough of the first grouping of services.
Sure. Thanks, Angela. Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday morning. I'm just going to answer one of the questions in the chat box, which is, what does SPA stand for? SPA stands for State Plan Amendment. So with that, let's dive into the first service. Angela talked about the contents of the provider manual. Today we're going to spend time looking at the definition, the service components, the modality, meaning whether it can be provided in an individual and or group setting, as well as the agency qualifications and the individual practitioner qualifications. We're not going to get into much of the exclusions, as Angela mentioned, nor are we going to talk about the training requirements today. So with that in mind, the 6 services that we're going to present today are services that I'm sure many are familiar to many of you. The foundation absolutely comes from not only the OPW waiver, but we also picked up on those services and moved them into the Bridges to Health waiver back in 2008, and really figured out ways to tailor them to meet the unique needs of children and families. So all 6 of these services, I truly believe, have the ability to impact not only an individual child with behavioral health needs or developmental disabilities or medical fragile needs, but also have the ability to impact the family's knowledge and skills to handle children with unique needs. So with that in mind, let's talk about dehabilitation, which is, it's no longer called dehabilitation. It now is formally called habilitation services. And this service is intended to assist individuals with developmental, medical, or behavioral disabilities with self-help, socialization, and adaptive skills necessary for successful functioning in their home and community. The specific service components include the following. So Dan, if you could go to the next slide. So this is about assistance with acquiring, retaining, or improving skills related to the following: personal grooming and cleanliness, household chores, which may include bed making, eating and preparing food, social and adaptive skills, assistance with transportation. It's not transportation, it's assistance with transportation, communication skills, participating in community events, safety skills, managing money, and making informed decisions. And Dan, if we can go to the next slide. Habilitation can be provided in an individual face-to-face intervention or in a group setting. The qualifications on the next slide include the following. The provider qualifications include New York State OPWDD certified not-for-profit habilitation provider agencies. And the individuals that can provide habilitation services to children and youth include individuals that are employed by those agencies. And with that in mind, I think we'll move to our second service, respite. Respite takes two different forms. It's both planned and crisis respite. So the definition includes short-term assistance and or relief for the child and the family or caregivers, which can be provided in a planned manner or delivered in a crisis environment. Workers supervise children and youth and engage the child in activities that support his or her or family's constructive interests and abilities. In other words, this is not intended to be a babysitting service. It's intended to be a therapeutic service. Respite providers will offer services with a level of expertise and understanding in implementing behavioral developmental interventions required to support the optimal functioning of children and youth. Providers will regularly communicate the details of the intervention plan so that there's carryover of skill from one respite service to the caregivers and treatment providers. So the goals and objectives that become articulated in the child's plan of care through other services continue to be supported through the respite worker. Individual service components include the following. Provide the needed break for the family and the child to ease stress at the home and promote overall wellness for the child and youth, as well as the family and caregiver. And of course, whenever we're talking about family and caregivers, everybody realizes we're talking about using a very broad definition of family and caregivers. Planned respite is planned direct care for the child by trained staff to support the needs while providing short-term relief for the caregiver. Crisis respite is short-term care and intervention strategies for children and their families as a result of a child's mental health and or substance abuse crisis event, medical crisis, or trauma that creates a risk for an escalation of symptoms without support and or loss of functioning. So again, those of you that are familiar with the B2H services of both planned and crisis respite, you'll see that that's been carried over into this service. Planned and crisis respite can be provided under the following modalities. It can be provided planned overnight respite in a one-on-one session. Planned day respite may be provided in a one-on-one session or in a group session, but no more than 3 HCBS enrollees. And crisis day or overnight respite is only delivered in a one-on-one setting. So the qualifications. The first bullet here is a phrase that you will all be dreaming about tonight because I'm going to repeat it so many times throughout today's discussion. The provider agencies include any child-serving agency or agency with children's behavioral health and health experience that is licensed, certified, or designated by DOH, OMH, or OASIS, or in the case of voluntary foster care agencies, licensed or approved by OCFS to provide comparable and appropriate services. That's a mouthful. For children in foster care, Out-of-home non-medical respite agencies must be approved respite and service providers that comply with Part 435 of 18 NYC-RR. In other words, in order to provide respite services to a child in foster care outside of the child's foster home, that other home must also be a licensed foster home. And those of you in B2H certainly understand that, and so we're continuing that moving forward. The supervisor of the respite provider must have a minimum of a bachelor's degree with 1 year experience in human services working with children and youth. And the individual qualifications will be detailed further in the manual. And again, we'll get into the training requirements in the manual. So pre-voc service. Pre-voc has an opportunity to be incredibly beneficial to many of our young adults. So pre-voc services are individually designed to prepare a youth age 14 and older, right? So there's a limitation there that the child has to be at least 14 years of age or older to engage in paid work, volunteer work, or career exploration. Pre-voc services are not job specific, but rather are geared towards facilitating success in any work environment for a youth whose disabilities would not permit them access to other pre-voc services. So some of the examples include the following: ability to communicate effectively with supervisors, coworkers, and customers, generally accepted workplace conduct and dress, ability to follow directions, ability to attend and complete tasks, punctuality and attendance, appropriate behaviors in and outside of the workplace, workplace problem-solving skills and strategies, mobility training, career planning, and proper use of job-related equipment and general workplace safety. The specific service components include the following: helping youth connect their educational plans to future career and vocational goals, helping youth to complete college or other applications to continue formal education and training. We should include specifically completing the FAFSA and other opportunities for funding for college. Helping youth apply for financial aid or scholarship programs. Oh, it's there. I missed it. Resume writing, interview techniques, role play, and job application completion. Exploring career options, facilitating appropriate work habits, acceptable job behaviors, and learning job production requirements. Teaching concepts, compliance, attendance, task completion, problem solving, and safety based upon specific curriculum related to the youth's disabilities. Assisting in identifying community service opportunities that could lead to paid employment. And documentation is maintained that the service is not available through other either federal or state-funded programs. Again, Medicaid is always the payer of last resort, so if there is an opportunity for pre-voc services to be provided through the child's school system, that should come first. The allowable service modalities for pre-voc services include one-on-one, or in a group session, but with no more than 6 other HCBS youth. And our qualifications. The provider agency qualifications include, and here is that sentence again, any child-serving agency or agency with children's behavioral health or health experience that is licensed, certified, or designated by DOH, OMH, or OASIS, or in the case of voluntary foster care agencies licensed or approved by OCFS to provide comparable and appropriate services. And that we also allow for not-for-profit vocational service providers. The individual qualifications include a minimum of an associate's degree with 1 year experience in human services, but we would prefer that the individual providing pre-voc services have a bachelor's degree with experience in human services working with children. The supervisor qualifications include a minimum of a bachelor's degree with 3 years experience in human services, but we would prefer that the supervisor have a master's with 1 year experience in human services. consistent with pre-voc services, sort of sometimes the next step up from pre-voc services might be considered supportive employment. Supportive employment is defined as the following. It is intended to provide ongoing supports to children, to youth, because of their disabilities, need intensive ongoing support to obtain and maintain an individual job in competitive or customized employment, or self-employment in an integrated work setting in the general workforce. Supportive employment services are individually designed to prepare youth, age 14 and older, to engage in paid work. Supportive employment services provide assistance to youth, age 14 and older, with disabilities as they perform in a work setting. And the individual service components include the following: supervising and training, intensive ongoing support to the youth, transportation to and from the job site, interfacing with employers regarding the youth's disability and needs related to his or her health care issues, other activities needed to sustain paid work, which may include employment assessments, job placement, adaptive and assistive equipment necessary for employment, job finding and development training in work behaviors, assessing the interest and fit of an individual for particular job opportunities, staff work with employers and job sites, preparing them to be able to make necessary and reasonable accommodations, on-site support for the individual as they learn specific job tasks, and monitoring through on-site observation through communication with job supervisors and employers. So you can see that this is a very hands-on service that has the potential to be highly, highly beneficial to our young adults. The allowable service modalities is only individual face-to-face intervention. And the qualifications of our supportive employment providers include the following. Once again, any child-serving agency or agency with children's behavioral health and health experience that is licensed, certified, or designated by DOH, OMH, or OASS, or in the case of voluntary foster care agencies, licensed or approved by OCFS to provide comparable and appropriate services. We also allow not-for-profit vocational service providers to become designated for this service. The individual qualifications include the following. The minimum is an associate's degree with 1 year experience in human service, but the preferred individual staff qualification is a bachelor's degree with 1 year experience in human services working with children. And as you'll see, these are the same qualifications as in pre-voc services. The supervisor qualifications at minimum include a bachelor's with 3 years experience, but we would prefer that the supervisor have a master's with 1 year experience in human services working with children and youth. All right, we are sailing through these slides pretty quickly. The next service that we're going to talk about is community self-advocacy training and support. And I have to say that this is probably one of my favorite services across the 11 HCBS services. We have defined community self-advocacy training and supports as the following. It's intended to improve the child and youth's ability to gain from the community experience and enables the child and youth environment to respond appropriately to the disability and or health care issues. Community self-advocacy training and supports provide families, caregivers, and collateral contacts with techniques and information not generally available so that they can better respond to the needs of the children and youth. The use of this service may appropriately be provided to prevent problems in the community settings as well as when the child and youth is experiencing difficulty. This service has the potential to be incredibly, incredibly beneficial to supporting family and caregivers. The individual service components are three. Training, which can be either on a one-on-one or in a group situation for the child and youth or the family and caregiver regarding methods and behaviors to enable success in the community. Each group must not exceed any more than 12 individuals. I think if you're looking at the definitions as well as the service components, this is an opportunity to be extremely creative and responsive to the needs of kids with behavioral health care needs, developmental disabilities, or medically fragile conditions. It also includes direct self-advocacy training in the community with collateral context regarding the child's disabilities and needs related to his or her health care issues. And third and finally, it includes self-advocacy training for the child and or youth and or the family and caregiver, including during community transitions. The allowable service modalities include individual face-to-face intervention, or the service may be provided in a group face-to-face, but no more than 3 children may be enrolled in any group activity at the same time. And our qualification slide. Our provider qualifications include the following. Any child serving agency or agency with children's behavioral health or health experience that is licensed, certified, or designated by DOH, OMH, or OASIS, or in the case of voluntary foster care agencies, licensed or approved by OCFS to provide comparable and appropriate services. We also allow not-for-profit corporations whose corporate purposes include the provision of community self-advocacy training and supports. The individual qualifications at a minimum include an individual with a bachelor's degree who's obviously employed by the agency and 2 years of experience, although we would prefer that the individual have a master's degree in education or in a human service field and 1 year of related experience. The supervisor qualifications, a minimum, include a master's degree with 1 year experience in human services with children and youth, but we would prefer that it be an individual with a master's degree and just a little bit more experience. All right. On to family caregiver supports and services. The definition of family caregiver supports and services is about enhancing the child's and youth's ability to function as part of a family caregiver unit and enhance the family caregiver's ability to care for the child in their home and community. And once again, family is very broadly defined and can include families created through birth, foster care, adoption, or any other self-created unit. It is not our job to define family. It is individuals' job to define family. We just want to be clear that this service is not intended to be the state plan service of family peer support services, which is delivered by certified family peers with lived experience. And oftentimes we get the question, what is the distinction between this service and the family peer support service? And the primary distinction is on the state plan side that the individual has lived experiences. The individual service components for family caregiver supports and services will be based upon a plan that's developed by the family and provides the following opportunities. To interact and engage the family caregiver and the child and youth, to offer educational, advocacy, and support services, resources to develop family caregivers' ability to independently access community services and activities. We're also hoping to engage and encourage the family caregiver's self-sufficiency in caring for the child and youth in their home and community, to address the needs and issues of relevance to the family caregiver unit as the child and youth is supported in the home and community, and to educate and train the family and caregiver unit on resource availability so that they might better support and advocate for the needs of the child and appropriately assess needed services and direct instruction and guidance in the principles of children's chronic conditions or life-threatening illnesses. That's a long sentence. Maybe we can chop that one up for our next presentation here. The allowable service modalities include individual face-to-face intervention as well as group face-to-face intervention, but no more than 2 children families. And for the last time today, we'll talk about the qualifications. And for the last time today, I'll repeat this sentence. So the provider qualifications include any child-serving agency or agency with children's behavioral health and health experience that is licensed, certified, or designated by DOH, OMH, or OASIS, or in the case of voluntary foster care agencies, licensed or approved by OCFS to provide comparable and appropriate services. Or a not-for-profit family caregiver support and service agencies. The individual staff qualifications include a minimum of a high school diploma, a high school equivalency, or a state education commencement credential with related human service experience. We would also prefer that the individual providing these services obviously have experience in working with children and families. The supervisor qualifications are a minimum of a bachelor's degree with 1 year experience in human services working with children and youth, but we would prefer 2 years of experience. That concludes our 6 services that we'd like to talk about today. We're absolutely looking forward to seeing your questions in the chat box. We want to encourage folks to consider applying for designation of each or any and all of these 6 services that we presented today. We all firmly believe that these services have the ability to positively impact children and families. And so our challenge is to make sure that we have a competent workforce out there to meet these needs. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
Great. Thanks so much, Mimi and Angela, for a great walkthrough of the services and an overview to start us off on Wednesday morning. Hopefully in the background, Angela got that aforementioned cup of coffee, and we're ready to do a quick walkthrough of some of the upcoming planned training in TA, as well as jump right into to questions as we've got a nice chunk of time remaining. So if you've been with us for a while, you might be aware of the technical assistance approach in terms of system transformation around both managed care on the adult side, home and community-based services on the adult side also. But so the idea here with HCBS and SPA is to do refresher and service overviews, which we're taking part in today and Friday. And then also coming to a webinar near you, we'll be looking at provider designation, both a walkthrough of the application when it's available, as well as some support for folks that are interested and might have questions. We're looking to do a pre-recorded webinar on rate methodology and to get that out there, and then offer some assistance around becoming a Medicaid provider for folks that are interested. On system transformation more broadly, as Angela had discussed, some of the shifting timelines that were covered at the last Children's MRT quarterly meeting, we'll look as the SPA timeline has adjusted to offer service refreshers as well as implementation guidance. So that'll include everything from billing to UM to specific requirements and things that folks are really critical levels of information for folks, not just to know and apply for designation, but actually to implement these services into their practice and service array. On the managed care side, as that transition will be approaching, very similar to the adult side, we'll do contracting for children's providers, revenue cycle management and utilization management principles and foundations. A refresher in case you missed that offering. Gosh, probably 2 years ago now. Time flies. On the adult side, and we'll be working in the background with the kids work group at the state level to tailor those so they're specific for children's providers. Also doing in-depth looks at billing rules and rates, that service-specific implementation support that I was just discussing, all setting folks up to be able and ready to participate in claims testing with the plans. And then last but certainly not least, looking a little bit at some of the workflows and related tasks that come along with HCBS in particular. So this slide should look familiar to folks if you've been with us before, and it's included in the slides, which Caitlin on our end was so kind to post in the chat box earlier, and they'll be available on the MCTAC website. So the OMH Managed Care Mailbox is now a specific web address for children's questions, which is great, so please make a note of that. Also questions the mailbox for DOH Health Homes for Children, OASAS, and OCFS. And then just a couple of friendly suggestions of things that I know that we subscribe to and keep an eye on to stay abreast of the information that's made available. So there's a Children's Managed Care listserv that you can subscribe to, DOH Health Home listserv, and then a Health Home Bureau mail log. So these are great areas for folks. And with that, we're going to open this up formally for questions and discussion. We've seen a number of great questions come in so far. So if you join us a little bit late and you're sending questions in, just again, you can use the chat feature in the upper right-hand corner as a little chat bubble. The only request, friendly request that we make is that there's a send to dropdown, and we just ask that you please select all panelists. So no matter where the respective panelists and folks who are helping us out with Q&A are located, they can see those questions coming in. So with that, I'll recycle a question that was already asked and then a follow-up. So what does SPA stand for? It's the state plan amendment. And then a question was, once the SPA is approved by CMS, do these services become the HCBS services? And the answer to that is no. SPA services and HCBS are two separate pots of services with different goals and requirements that will be very clearly outlined first in the SPA manual that's currently available, as well as the draft HCBS manual that'll be coming soon. So folks on the line.
Can we interrupt for a second? This is Angela over at OMH. Just to add something to that question, once the SPA is approved, just as people go back to the SPA webinars that are posted on MCTAC's website, and then certainly as these two webinars on the HCBS services are released and posted, the clarity around which services are state plan and which services are HCBS are clarified in both of those places. Some of the existing 1915C services do eventually become state plan Medicaid services, and we're not going to get into that detail today, but that is available also on the Children's Managed Care website, which was one of the slide before this one for that link. And Dan, we'll just keep going with questions.
So this is Mimi. A question has come in and it says, can providers be existing bridges to health healthcare integrators for purposes of habilitation? Please explain OPWDD requirement. So let me break that down a little bit. Current B2H healthcare integrators can perform the service of care management. They do not provide services. So the answer is no. Can providers of existing B2H HCI also provide habilitation? You cannot be a care manager and a service provider at the same time. The OPWDD requirement comes about because this service is about habilitative services, primarily for individuals with developmental disabilities, who might also have co-occurring behavioral health care needs and medically fragile conditions. You want to take the next one, Angela? Maybe I'll take the next one. It says, unlike adults, kids receiving HCBS can also receive OPWDD services. That's a big question because it's not clear within the question what OPWDD services the person is asking about. The general rule of thumb is that a child or any individual can only be enrolled in one set of HCBS services at a time. So we wouldn't have a child who's in foster care with a developmental disability and eligible for any one of these 6 services and also enrolled in the OPWDD waiver. So just like we have today, kids are either in B2H, developmental disabilities, or they're in the OPW waiver. That will continue in the future. The next question is about foster care, so I'll take that one. Does this mean that voluntary foster care agencies aren't allowed to provide habilitation services? That's correct, and that's our current rule today. There are, however, many voluntary foster care agencies who are also OPWDD providers. Where that's the situation, then yes, you would be allowed to provide and become designated for habilitation services. You want to take this?
The next question is, what training will planned respite workers need? We did not review the training requirements for any of these services, nor will we do that on Friday. When the HCBS provider manual is released, that will be detailed in the manual for everyone to review.
Next question is, do all the youth in the group need to be approved for HCBS? And the answer is yes. Whenever we talked about any of the modalities, including a group of kids, we're talking about a group of children that have been determined to be HCBS eligible. The next question is also a foster care question. Can support to assist a child in foster care through college, once accepted and enrolled, be compensated by pre-voc or supportive employment? So a child who is in foster care and is accepted into college can continue to receive any of these HCBS services. We've actually been very successful in B2H and getting many kids accepted and be very successful in college. And we think it has to do with these supports, so that will continue.
But the thing to remember that the HCBS services that we're reviewing today and Friday are available up until the 21st birthday. So if, in this question, if a foster care youth was still in college past their 21st birthday, then there would be other HCBS services available in the adult system.
That's a really great point, Angela. I'm glad you brought that up, because we're going to have another webinar where we get into a great deal of detail about the eligibility for each of these HCBS services. We didn't want to get too involved in that today, because we really want folks to be thinking about becoming designated for these services. So stay tuned on more details around HCBS eligibility. The next question is, can you define the breadth of collateral contacts? Would this include, for example, employers and peer employers? I think we have a definition that you'll see in our service manual, both on the SPA side and on the HCBS side, that defines collateral contacts. I believe it does include employers and peer employees, excuse me. So positive to that question.
So we've received a number of questions very specific to who can apply for designation, such as a not-for-profit that provides services to adults. As the designation application is released, we will have a webinar on the provider designation application, and I think those kinds of questions we will leave to that webinar, which will be coming up very soon. So one of the other questions is, will these services be available to children in health home under their respective waivers until they're converted to SPA services? This question really, for me, indicates that we have a lot more work to do in terms of educating folks about all these differences. This is complicated, the design that we're putting forth. So let me just review a couple points. So children will begin to be enrolled in health homes on December 5th. The health home team at DOH recently had I think it was a Wednesday webinar to review the readiness of particular health homes, and there have been a number of materials that have been posted to the DOH website. As the children begin to be enrolled in health homes, children can also still be receiving and be enrolled in the 1915C waivers across the 3 state agencies. Children who are in waivers will not transition to health homes in December. They will transition when the managed care transition occurs. The waiver services that transition to state plan, that will begin to occur in October of 2017 and January of 2018, along with the other transitions related to managed care. Once the slide deck is posted, I really encourage people to go back and relook at the timeline. We did notice one error, so we will be making one change for Friday's slide deck, just so that is clear. So enrollment in Health Home begins in December. The other licensed practitioner state plan service starts in March. And in October of 2017 is when a number of transitions occur, in addition to HCBS services becoming available, the children in 1915C waivers transitioning their care coordination to Health Home, and various other transition points.
If I could just add to that, Angela. So we recognize that there's a lot of moving parts, and it's very complicated keeping all of these things clear. I just want to say for our current 1915C waiver service providers, whether B2H, the OMH waiver, or the Care at Home waiver, it's important that we stay focused on continuing to serve those kids. When I have more details, when Meredith Ray-Labatt from OMH has more details, and when the Care at Home folks have more details about what it means to transition a child in an existing 1915C waiver into managed care, we're going to be talking with you and working through the very fine details about what that transition looks like on an individual case-by-case basis. So we don't want folks worrying about the transition. We recognize the need to provide very detailed guidance about what actually needs to happen. So I hope that settles some nerves.
So to put it in a different way, if you are a current 1915C provider, you continue business as usual, enrolling kids, discharging kids when they no longer need the services until the transition to managed care, which begins downstate on October 1st of 2017. So nothing changes for the 1915C waivers until that point, and as Mimi said, we'll be giving lots of guidance on what that transition will look like for both the providers and the children.
And the only thing that does change is please apply for designation in a couple of weeks. You clearly, as the existing waiver providers, understand these services, understand how to provide these services in children's homes and communities. We think that you're primed to offer these services under the new array in a managed care environment.
Okay. Let's see, we'll take one last question. Let's see.
So if you guys are if you're looking through for one last, we'll just chime in as we're kind of cruising through as well. And a few folks, whether they joined later, just wanted it reiterated, had asked about the timeline. So we can just move that. I can just pull that slide up for folks to take another quick look at.
Dan, one question we'll just address, and we've said this in previous webinars. The question is, like the adult system, are these HCBS services only available to HARP families through a health home? One of the things we want to reiterate is there is no HARP benefit package for children. That is only an adult product. Children will get their care coordination in health homes, including those children that are HCBS eligible. So that similarity to adults that are HARP eligible who receive care coordination from health home is similar, that kids who are HCBS eligible will also get their care coordination from health home. And you've all asked a number of other great questions, which we will either come back to on Friday or answer as we have previously in question and answer documents available later on the MCTAC website.
Great. Thanks so much to both Angela and Mimi for a great presentation and walking through an abundant number of questions. And like Angela mentioned, we'll be rolling over as many as we can to Friday and look forward to continuing the conversation with the remaining services in the upcoming HCBS package. So thanks so very much. And if you haven't registered yet for Friday, you can do so at the MCTAC website, and we'll look forward to talking to you more then. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan.